Okay, welcome to Tresses and Testimonials. I'm going to be doing Michelle's hair. I have so many women that come to me that have awesome testimonies, and they all have stories to tell. And everybody that comes to a salon always has some information that they want to share. And I thought that this will bless each and every one of you. So she's going to be sharing her story while I do her hair, just like we do on a normal basis. And I'm going to be doing a natural twist out on her curly hair using Argan O's Moroccan mousse, some gel, and just a couple of clips. So she's going to be talking about her marriage and just, the trials and tribulations and her strength and everything that she's been through. So Michelle, welcome to YouTube.
Hi.
How long have you been married?
Since 2011. We've been together since 2009. February 2009. But we've been together or married since 2011.
Wow. And what would you say has been the most difficult part about being married?
For me, the most difficult part has been just really becoming one. The Bible says that when you're married, the two become one. So becoming one with my spouse, I noticed was one of the most difficult parts. I mean, we can do everything else together, pay bills, just do different things. And I think for me, it's just really becoming one. Praying together, reading together, following God together, writing our visions down together, and actually doing exactly what it is that we both desire to do for our families first and then for one another.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say come together, does that mean emotionally, spiritually, financially? What exactly do you mean?
At least for me, it's always been spiritually. Financially, it's always been fine. We always able to come together financially, emotionally. I think for me, what I've experienced the most for a very long time is coming together spiritually. For women, we're natural lovers, and so we can love our God. But for men, it's sometimes I see that it's hard for them to love on a God that they can't see. So spiritually, it's been really difficult coming together and really seeing men submit under God. As women, we can submit under our husbands, we can submit under authority, but for men, sometimes it's kind of hard for them to submit under the Father.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And how many kids do you guys share?
We have 6 kids, so we have 3 boys and 3 girls. Meeting him, he already had his daughter. I had my 3 boys, and then we had 2 girls together.
And how is it to come together like with a blended family? Is that hard? Is it difficult to do?
No. You hear so much. Stories about blended families, and when I met him, Jemiah was just turning 2.
Wow.
And we blended in so well. My boys were around 8, 6 or 7 or 7 and 8, and they loved one another. Every family's different.
Yes.
So I've always listened to people and what they had to say about blended families. I came up in a blended family, but with my parents, I think especially with my mom, the love was always there. And so I just loved on her like she was my own. I knew that if I was going to be with him, then she was a part of him, and he thought the same thing. If I'm going to be with her, then I have to love everything that comes with her, including her kids. So I've never had an issue with his daughter. I love her like my own. She calls me mom. My kids, after a while him and I were dating, they ended up calling him Pops. And then today he's their everything. So I didn't have to experience nothing like that.
I know so many women are afraid, especially, single like me, I'm single, and they're afraid to get out there because they think, okay, if I already have 2 kids, 2 baby fathers,
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you are, a woman of God or coming into this walk, you're so worried about your image. What kind of advice can you give to people that's like, single, looking for a husband, and having that, having their standards too high, or not having realistic standards?
Well, I could say this. I was a single mom of 3 kids with 2 baby fathers. And as a lot of women could agree with me, I mean, I dealt with one of my kids' fathers telling me that no one's ever gonna love you. You know, you have 2 kids, and you know, no man's gonna want to accept the responsibility of 2 kids. And so I always had that in the back of my head that, you know, I'm not gonna find anybody. For me, being a single mom with 3 kids, when I met Jamal, I was just getting out of a really bad relationship with my last son's father, and I got so tired. You know, as women, we're so strong. You know, we get out of a relationship and we can pick back up and, you know, put a smile on our face and walk in our faces and then walk into another relationship as if we were just not torn apart. But I think what happened with me was I was so tired of meeting the wrong person. I wanted at the time Mr. Right now and not focusing on Mr. Right. And I gave it all to God, and it may sound cliche, but I really did. It wasn't until I submitted everything of me to God that then He brought me someone. I remember praying after being in that horrible relationship for 4 years. I told the Father, I said, you know what? I'm done. If it's going to be me and you for the rest of my life, I'm just going to have to accept it because I can't do this anymore. And in my mind, I gave myself a time frame of, I'm going to be single for 3 years.
Wow.
You know, and the Lord never said that to me. I'm just like, you know, it's going to take forever. I'm going to be single for 3 years until I find the right man. But it was only 3 months.
Jesus.
But because I set my mind up, and I already knew, and I told my Father, I said, Lord, if it's just me and you for the rest of my life, I'm just going to have to be okay with that. So what happened was my attention, my love, my desire to want to be with somebody, I turned it all to the Father. Instead of looking for what I knew probably wasn't out there for me, I turned it all to the Father. And when I did, 3 months later, I met my husband with his handsome self.
Awesome, man. So what the previous relationship and the relationship that you have now, and what you looked for, what your standards were, what you looked for in a man, what differed? What was different?
Everything. Physical, emotional, and even spiritual. My last relationship, but prior to being married, or prior to meeting Jamal, I was a woman. I always wanted physical things. I wanted someone who had a nice smile, someone that could make me laugh. I remember telling God one day, I said, you know, Lord, I just want a tall, black, handsome man. You know, someone that could make me laugh, someone that could sing. But I never asked God for a man of God. And so what ended up happening was I met someone who was everything that I desired from the physical standpoint. But spiritually, he was dead.
Jesus.
And so what was funny, and I always share this testimony, is that God gave me exactly what I asked for to show me that what I wanted wasn't what I needed. And when He gave me what I wanted almost took me to my death. And after leaving him and meeting Jamal, the Lord gave me somebody totally opposite of what I asked Him for, and he's everything that I need. At the time I liked tall men, and my husband is shorter than me. You know, I liked it older men, and my husband is just 4 years younger than me. And so, you know, what God showed me was like, we don't really know what we want. And this is why we have to trust God and giving us the discernment to choose our mates, because as women, we always want the physical appearance. He has to look this way. He has to talk this way, you know, and we really never ask God for the spiritual part of a husband. You know, the one that's going to pray for us and pray with us, the one that we don't have to ask him or tell him what we're going through, because he's a man of God. He discerns all that's going on with his wife, you know, and so that's what I got with Jamal. He's more man than I ever had, than anybody.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, being married to Jamal and now having kids, and now that you guys are a blended family, what are the things that you enjoy most about being in a union, being married, and not just being a boyfriend and a girlfriend?
Seeing the transition with my kids, you know, I've been around a lot of strong women, single women who've had to raise their kids by themselves. Seeing the transition with my children, especially with my daughters, because they were both born with both mommy and daddy in the house, didn't have to face the challenges that my other boys had to face just having a mom. Seeing daddy and waking up to daddy and mommy every morning, you know, it's just different. Seeing how even my older boys transition with seeing me as a single mom and then seeing me as a wife, it makes it complete. It makes it great. I mean, we are strong women and we feel that we can do it all, and we don't need a man to validate us. But when you find a right man, you'll never really be complete. When you find a right man, because you can be in a relationship with a man and still feel alone. There was times when I was in a relationship and my significant other was there, I still felt alone. You know, I never felt like that in my marriage. I didn't feel like with this marriage I felt complete. It's kind of like that Neo song. What is that? I'm a movement by myself.
But we're forced when we're together.
That's it. That's it right there. So I'm definitely, I was independent and all those things, and I was just getting stuff done. But it was just so much better to have somebody on the same page with you, and doing it with you.
That's funny because even with me, my 2-year-old son Savari is so much his personality. You find that they're like more happy.
Right.
They're more happier when they have both parents.
Yeah.
It's a fact. Like I observed that, raising Yasir alone and by myself, and then they get to see you struggle.
Right.
And they don't have a male role model. They don't have somebody to emulate and to look after.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of left looking after you. And at the time, I didn't even know God when I was raising Yasir, and the way that I do now with Savari, and he's a happy baby.
Yeah.
Yasir is fine now, but he wasn't as happy as Savari was as, at his age.
Right.
So it is important to have a husband. It's important to have a male role model, a physical father.
Right.
Besides God and in your kid's life, that's important.
Even speaking about that, I remember at one point, before meeting Jamal, when me and my other son's father were not in good terms, I closed myself off. When things went right, I would just close myself in the room, and then the kids suffer.
Wow.
What's wrong with mom, and they don't have anybody to talk to because they want to talk to you about it, but now you're not in the mood to talk to anybody because you and your significant other are not on the same page. So as women, we tend to close ourselves off or get attitudes with our kids, and it's not really towards them. I'm just upset because he's not understanding me, and so now I'm just mad and don't talk to me. Mommy's mad right now. Give me a minute. And then our kids suffer behind us. So having a husband, having the right man, period, is a blessing all the way around. Because even when your kids want to talk to you and they can't, they have somebody else to go to. Well, mommy's busy. Well, let me go see what daddy thinks about this. And I think it's important. Even with me, my dad left at an early age. I think I was around 10 years old. And things spiraled out of control after he left. He was the glue that kept everything together. And when he was around, things were good. And then the moment he left, I want to say just everything hit the fan. And we made decisions that we know we would have never made if he was around. So I think it's important, especially nowadays with these boys, that they have an awesome male role model in their lives.
Wow. Let's talk about submission.
Submission.
It's hard, especially when you're conditioned to do stuff by yourself and on your own and be strong. And it's I know a lot of women, including myself and you, we're strong. We're so strong-willed that when we do get into a relationship, it's very hard to submit according to what the Bible says submission is. It's hard to submit. And it's hard for you to submit because you're very vocal and
I am
strong-willed. So talk about the time where you had to submit.
Well, in the beginning of our marriage, I remember Jamal telling me he was going to take me to our pastor because I wouldn't submit. And at this point, it was really submitting my bills. Because it started off with that, I paid all the bills because I was so used to it. And him moving in, he's like, well, what am I going to do? And he would get upset about it and say that he was going to take me to my pastor. And tell my pastor that I'm not allowing him to be the man that God has called in my life and different things like that. My view on submission in the past is different than what it is now. For so long we hear preachers talk about submission and how men use submission to be like superior over the women, and it's not like that. The Bible does says that women be submissive unto your husbands, but that's where they stop. If they continue reading, it also says men love your wives as Christ loved the church.
That's right.
And he also said, if you don't know how much Christ loves the church, then men love your wives as your own body. And so, what I say about submission, and I go back to my challenges with that, is if men were to love their women like Christ loved the church, we wouldn't have a problem submitting.
That's right. That's true.
I can't submit under a man who's not loving me the way Christ loved the church. I can't submit under a man who doesn't have a vision. I can't submit under a man who's not submitting under God. And so they want that submission, but then they're not submitting under God. So again, I say that any man that loves his wife as Christ loves the church and is submitting under the Father, you wouldn't have to worry about women submitting to you, because you're doing exactly what God is calling you to do. Therefore, if it flows from the head down, if he's doing what he has to do, then we will do what we need to do. Submitting for me was difficult because I am very outspoken. I'm very strong because I was independent for so long. I had to learn how to be submissive. And I think the first time I had an encounter with God on submission, I was at Pastor Brelove's church. And we were having worship, and at that point I was having a hard time submitting. I spoke my mind. I didn't care too much about how he felt, and it was so bad because the Lord was like, you prayed to have a husband like this. You asked me for a man like this, and now that you have him, you're gonna lose him if I continue doing what I was doing. And so I found myself, I'm not a runner, but I found myself, I got on my seat, and I went up to the altar, and I just began to just worship. And I think at this point I was on the floor, and somebody called my husband to come and comfort me. And so he comforted me. I got up and I ran. I just began to run and worship God. And I was running with my eyes closed. And I say like this, like the Holy Spirit was my GPS, because I was running with my eyes closed. And there was so much I was able to bump into, but I did it. But I remember running, and at some point I was running back towards my husband's where he was standing. I began to run back towards him in his direction, and the Lord said, submit. And when I fell to my knees and I opened my eyes, he was standing right over me. And that was the first time, and that's when I was really dealing with submission, that the Lord really came and just told me how important it was. So I remember just falling down, and he said, and submit. I opened my eyes and I see my husband's Timberland boots. I'm like, yeah, he in front of me. In front of the whole church. Oh my God. But towards the end of service, a lot of people came up to me. They were like, you blessed me. And that's the thing. We don't understand how many people are connected to us and who's watching us. And we were in a church full of older people who've been married for a long time, for years. They had years on us. But that one incident blessed a lot of people, and they came to us towards the end of service and just saying how they struggled themselves with submission.
Wow.
Yeah. So I hope I answered your question, because I went all over the place.
No, you answered it. With submission, what kind of favor do you think? Because a lot of women are like, I'm not submitting.
Oh no.
I'm not submitting. What is it gonna do for me?
It's gonna hinder your prayers. If you do not submit unto your husband, it will hinder your prayers. If your husband does not love you like Christ loves the church, it will hinder his prayers. It is both 50-50. It's not one does it and the other don't. Y'all both have to play you guys' part. So husbands, love on your wives so that your prayers are not hindered. And wives, submit to your husbands. And with submission is I looked at it as a sign of weakness. Like, he's not about to step all over me and tell me what to do and when to do. And it's not like that. Submission is different to every woman, because some women, they don't believe in the cooking and the cleaning. Some women can't cook and clean. And some men believe that submission is, I want food on the table when I come home from work. I want all these things done, but it's all different for every woman. Submission looks different. The language is different.
A lot of people associate submission with authority. in ranking and superior and inferior, and it's not. It's not, because as women we have to be able to submit because we're their helpmeet. We're the person. We're their direct prayer source to God.
Right.
So if we're not submitting and we're always against them, how can we go to God?
Right.
So
but
submission is so important.
And it is important, but you know what? Women have to stop thinking and honestly read the word for yourself. If God has called us to be this person's helpmeet, right? And this is a strong man that he has us with, let's just say. This man has an awesome vision. God's given him the purpose that God has given him for even being here is big. And he has called you to be his helpmeet. And this man is strong. How much stronger do you think you are?
That's true.
We women, you're twice as strong. If you're here to help your spouse, then you have to be twice as strong as he is. And understand that, yes, the man is the head, but we're the neck. What's the head without the neck?
How can it rotate?
Exactly.
What you gonna do?
What's the head without the neck? And so, for so long, I just think because it's been preached that way for so long, we just got it subconsciously. We think that submission is just being weak and just being slaves, in a sense, being submissive to our masters, and it's not like that.
That's very true.
And it takes a strong woman to be submissive. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It takes a really strong woman to be submissive, because there's so many times where, and as women, we love to speak our mind.
We don't know how to shut up.
We don't know how to shut up or when to shut up. And so what's important, I think the key is with being submissive is having your ears always inclined to hear God's voice, because there's been so many times where my husband and I will get into a heated fellowship, and I'm going to say heated fellowship because we're on YouTube. We've got into heated fellowships, and I had all right to tell him how I felt. And if my ears were not inclined to hear the voice of God when he said, don't say that, things would have gotten really ugly. And it takes so much, especially for me at that time, just to be quiet. I just wanted to say something, and it makes sense as the Lord said, don't say that. And you would see my husband's face like, he just waiting.
And what was the outcome of you not saying anything?
Man, let me tell you, there was no arguments. We were able to talk. There was peace. Oh my God, because I tell men don't hold grudges like women do.
They showed up.
We can hold a grudge. I'll walk by you. And won't say a word to you for 3 days. You hungry? There's some bread, peanut butter, and jelly in the cabinet. Go make you some to eat.
That is very true. Okay, so we are going to let Michelle's hair dry, and then we're going to come back. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We are very transparent. She don't hold no punches. No. Neither do I. So you guys throw it at us, and we'll answer your questions, and we'll be back.
All right. They've been calling me.
Who?
The boys. Does that mom, we on our way? Stop it. I told you I'm going to be recording live. Are you blowing up my phone? Oh. So, what? So what happened? Where are you? Oh, okay. Listen, make sure that you save a slice of pizza for me and Ariana, because she's gonna need to eat.
Somebody.
What y'all have?
Thank you.
Really? Did y'all bring something for the kids?
Is that how it started?
She just crying and stuff?
I hope it went through right.
What about Ariana? I'll find you something.
Yep.
Okay. Bye.
We found my phone.
They here?
I think when, yeah, they here.
I can't stop it.
Oh.
Who is?
Stop it.
you.